A quiet Texas street turned into a live courtroom when two imposters in tactical vests tried to detain a homeowner. But the man they picked wasn't just any resident. He was the FBI agent they never should have messed with on a Saturday morning in Plano, Texas. The sort of morning when sprinklers ticked rhythmically across trimmed lawns and the air carried the faint sound of bicycles rattling over cracked pavement. Reginald Carter stepped from his two-story brick house, with only the mundane thought of hauling trash to the curb. Weighing on his mind, he barely advanced a handful of strides before spotting three figures aligned like actors awaiting their cue at the border of his drive, two men in imitation tactical gear with community enforcement stitched clumsily on their fronts, and wedged between them stood Linda Whitfield, the HOA president, her lips flat and her eyes cold. Reginald slowed his pace, trash bag clutched, and studied the tableau. What might have fooled a passing neighbor immediately struck him as counterfeit. The uniforms ill-fitting, one sagging the other, cinched unevenly. The boots bearing second-hand wear, the postures too deliberate, too staged. Each detail rang false, Mr. Carter. Linda began, her tone clipped, rehearsed as though this confrontation had been rehearsed. "We need to talk." Reginald lowered the bag, deliberately settling his stance, hands on hips, and asked about what one of the strangers advanced, tall, chalk-skinned. Bald and hidden behind mirrored lenses that disguised intent community enforcement, he intoned, "You're violating neighborhood regulations. We're here to detain you until real officers arrive." His words dropped like lead. "Detain me," Reginald echoed, voice quiet with almost playful disbelief. Linda folded her arms tight. "You've brushed aside every notice and pushed us too far. We won't allow one man to erode our rules. These men are here to enforce compliance." Reginald's eyebrow lifted as his gaze moved between Linda and the imposters. "And what precise offenses am I accused of?" The shorter companion, thick-set, unkempt beard, fished a crumpled document from his vest property. "Infractions, failure to heed, HOA directives, driveway alterations. Loud gatherings, the charges pile high." Reginald nearly laughed. "So you presume that entitles you to cross onto my land, and what did you say? Detain me." The tall man's jaw hardened. "Correct, either come willingly or face resistance." The atmosphere froze. Even birds seemed hushed, as if the entire neighborhood listened from windows. Reginald spied curtains, twitching silhouettes with phones raised, familiar secrecy, eyes watching, recording. He took a step forward, voice tempered with steel. "Let me clarify something. There is no sanctioned community enforcement. You have no badges, no jurisdiction. You are trespassers." Linda flushed scarlet. "Don't lecture me on authority, Reginald. You think status exempts you from order. We've fielded complaints, legitimate complaints, and I refuse to watch this neighborhood unravel." The bearded man shifted uneasily, yet the tall one stayed rigid, hand hovering near his belt, suggesting a hidden weapon. Reginald tilted his head, gaze sharp. He had seen such pretenders before, men confusing costumes for strength, but he carried knowledge they lacked. He was not only a resident, but a trained federal operative hardened by years dismantling cartels and interrogating men far more dangerous than these imposters. Still, he revealed nothing. Instead, his smile cut sharp. "You've chosen the wrong driveway today." Linda edged closer, voice rising. "Don't tempt me, Reginald. These men can hold you until officers come, and when they do, you'll answer, not us." Then Reginald dropped. The trash bag had split, a soda can rolling across the pavement, clattering metallic and echoing through the street. It was not surrender, but declaration. A man anchoring his stance, ready for a confrontation. Linda had never imagined blinds shifted. Wider, a teen across the street lifted his phone, already streaming. This was more than resident versus HOA president. It was spectacle unfolding, and the real trial was only beginning. The stillness snapped. The tall man surged forward, boots scraping, claiming territory, mirrored glasses flashing Reginald's steady face. But beneath the veneer, he ached to prove himself. "Sir, don't complicate matters," he barked. "You're disobeying that authorizes escalation." Reginald's lips bent near a smirk. Escalate, you trespass here with no credentials, no sanction, no awareness of how grave your blunder is. Retreat now before regret consumes you. Linda snapped, eyes narrowed, voice dripping with disdain. Threats won't mend this. You ignored warnings. Fines letters. The HOA preserves order and safety for respectable people like you. She bit off the end, her mouth tightening, revealing more than intended. Reginald caught it instantly, eyes narrowing. People like me. Be cautious how you complete that, thought Linda. The bearded one, hurried words spilling. This doesn't need ugliness. Just come with us. Wait for the police. Maybe they'll treat you lightly. Police, Reginald asked evenly. Real law officers or the toy credentials you ordered off the internet? The tall man stiffened, while his partner's glance at Linda wavered. She pressed forward, clinging to her theater. These men are sanctioned by the board. We owe you no answers. Reginald chuckled, shaking his head. Linda, listen carefully. You invited two grown men in costume store armor to my driveway and called it law. Does that sound like justice? The audience thickened curtains, lifting phones, emerging porches filling. Reginald lowered his tone, still audible. Authority is not a cheap vest and a scowl. It's law training accountability, and real police will be fascinated by this charade. The bearded man's throat pulsed, doubt seeping in, but the tall one pressed nearer, inches away, insisting you're non-compliant, resist, and, we restrain, don't test me, Reginald. Unflinching leaned closer, voice low, but sharp son. I've faced cartel enforcers less reckless than you. Step back before this spirals beyond recovery. Cracks spread through the man's mask, doubt seeping. Linda shouted desperate. Why must others follow order while you do as you please? This community has a system order, Reginald, and you reject it. Maybe you don't belong. Reginald met her stare. Authority isn't built through imposters and intimidation. It's earned your actions. Reveal control, not principle. The blow landed. Linda's mask faltered, then stiffened, arms folding tighter. The bearded man's nerves surfaced. Maybe we should step off the street, he muttered, but the tall man glared. No, we stay. Reginald inhaled, steady, his years of training guiding him. He had deconstructed stronger men who wielded fear like currency, and he knew exactly how to break illusions without a strike. Tell me something, Linda, when you summoned these imposters? Did you weigh the cost? Because once the real police arrive, and trust me, they are coming, their questions won't fall on me but on you for fabricating authority. Linda blinked, pallor, stealing her face across the street. A voice rang. Leave him alone. Echo rolling down the block, the confrontation had evolved into standoff. Reginald focused, unwavering. This is your final warning. Walk away now before the neighborhood watches you leave in cuffs. The bearded one twitched, faltering, while the tall man clenched fists, unable to drop his charade. But Reginald understood this clash was only escalating, and the community was about to witness far more than a petty dispute. The street now buzzed alive. What began as driveway tension morphed into spectacle, blinds drawn, wide windows, open porches crowded, phones lifted, a scene like television unfolding across from him. The Hendersons stood together, whispering disbelief. She's gone too far. Reginald caught fragments but locked on his foes, cataloging sloppy gear, nervous glances searching for backup, restless hands. No professionals, just actors in a collapsing play from the sidewalk. Teen Marcus Johnson, whom Reginald recalled playing basketball, lifted his phone higher and shouted, Yo, Mr. Carter, I got you on live. Thousands are watching. The taller imposter snapped his head toward him. Put that down, he barked. Taking a threatening step in the boy's direction, that was the wrong move. Reginald shifted instantly, cutting his stance sharply to shield the teenager, his frame, a barrier between danger and innocence. His voice sliced through the air, frigid and deliberate. If you even think about laying a hand on that kid, this confrontation stops in an instant. The imposter froze, stunned to discover that Reginald's resolve was immovable. Linda stumbled forward, words scrambling from her lips. This is a neighborhood issue. No one else should interfere. But her command only ignited the crowd louder. A woman bounced a baby on her hip and shouted from her porch. Neighborhood issue. Looks like bullying to me soon. Other voices rose. This is wrong. Where'd you dig up these clowns? You can't arrest your neighbor for trimming his lawn the wrong way. The longer Linda lingered with her so-called enforcers, the less control she possessed, what was meant to intimidate. Reginald twisted into a tribunal where she and her hired muscle were the ones exposed, judged by the eyes of every household surrounding them. Reginald let the silence stretch taut before he spoke again. Linda, hear them yourself. This is not order. This is disorder, and the architect of it is you. Her jaw locked, but her words trembled faintly. You twist everything. Reginald, you've always been a thorn, always bending rules, ignoring standards we bled to maintain. He tilted his head, measured tone. Cutting. No, Linda. Your problem is confusing command with leadership. They are not interchangeable. The line echoed like a ruling neighbor's, shifted, murmuring, nodding phones fixed. Catching every frame of tension, the bearded accomplice swiped sweat. From his temple, his composure unraveling look. Man, he muttered low. Maybe we bail, this isn't worth the fallout. But his partner hissed, no, we finish this. The tall figure puffed his chest. Last chance you walk with us, or we'll use force, Reginald. Nearly laughed at the absurdity. You truly want to stage this with an audience of cameras broadcasting your failure? Then by all means, let the world witness who you are. The tall man faltered, scanning the glowing screens, feeling the weight of countless, unseen jurors. Linda lunged forward, voice cracked with desperation. Don't buy into his tricks. He's twisting you because of his job. Reginald cut her short sharply. Careful, Linda. His tone barely raised, but more potent than her yelling the crowd. Hushed at the unspoken warning, Reginald returned to the imposters, dropping his pitch so they leaned closer. Listen carefully. Only two paths remain. Leave quietly, and hope the police don't stack charges or continue this farce and be dismantled. Before every set of eyes. Here the bearded man swallowed his gaze, darting to Linda. She gave a faint shake, clinging to illusion, but the grip was slipping. Marcus shouted across the street. They're finished, Mr. Carter. We all see it. The crowd roared, agreement voices swelling. Reginald remained motionless, the neighborhood itself. His ally, he needed no flex. The truth was bleeding out, captured one angle at a time, but pressure mounted the imposters, reckless. Eddie's hand twitched inside his vest, until with a sudden motion, he produced metal cuffs clanking loudly. The sound severed the hum of voices. Neighbors gasped as though feeling cold iron themselves. You're under neighborhood arrest, he croaked, his bravado cracking. Don't force me. To use these, the sound hung heavy. Reginald's eyes fixed on the cuffs, then back on Eddie's hidden fear. His words fell measured, each one deliberate. If you come one step nearer with those cuffs, you commit a felony impersonation, unlawful restraint. That's prison, not probation. Eddie's grip trembled. Pride, battling sense. The bearded partner hissed. Eddie, this is madness. We'll get booked ourselves. Shut it. Eddie snapped his voice too loud, carrying Linda clawed for control. She lifted her, chin yelling to the neighborhood. Don't be fooled. This is a lawful community. We enforce standards. He's trying to scare you. But the declaration collapsed. Neighbors groaned. Someone shouted, You've no right. Linda, another added, This is harassment, not order. Reginald edged closer, voice sharpened to glass. I've handled real cuffs and real authority. I know when a man is bluffing. Drop them now, or you'll never outrun the consequences. Sweat prickled along Eddie's temple, his pride eroding. Sean tugged at his arm. Cameras are rolling, man, stop this. But Eddie jerked free. I said, I've got this. He thrust the cuffs like a blade. The crowd recoiled. Someone screamed, Call the police, phones tilted higher. Documenting the showdown, Reginald. did not retreat, his frame solid, his voice low and grave. You're a single step from ruining your life. Think hard before committing that mistake. Eddie faltered, sweat dripping, hand shaking enough for all to see the image of authority shattered. Linda shrieked with fury. Do it! Don't let him win! Cuff him! Prove this neighborhood has order! But her command detonated. Gasps. People shouted back. Linda, you've lost it! Others louder. You're no law here. The momentum turned Reginald's voice, swelled calm, but commanding everyone here. Witnesses the truth. This isn't enforcement. This is false power, dressed as authority, and you're pawns of someone who despises the law, not honors it. The bearded man lowered his eyes, shame washing over. Him muttering, I didn't want this. Eddie glared at him, then at Linda, trapped between crumbling pride and fear before he could decide. Reginald stepped forward, closing the space, eyes locked, voice dropping to that professional register, son touch. Me and the real police won't need questions. I'll lay out every flaw you made in the last 10 minutes. Men like you I dismantle as a career. Eddie froze, the cuffs dangling, useless crowd, rumbling with approval, voices chiming. Leave him alone, you're. Finish the street itself had chosen. Reginald straightened, relaxed yet firm. This ends here. You have no authority, no power, and the more you stand, the deeper. The hole you dig, Eddie's shoulders sagged, grip slackening, Sean shuffled backward, unraveling. Linda burned, red, screaming. You don't belong. You never did. That's why you resist her words cut raw. The crowd erupted, outrage boiling. That's enough, Linda, another shouted. You've exposed yourself. Reginald's composure held, though disappointment shadowed his eyes. He turned back to the imposters, steady voice, walk away now, or your story ends with sirens, cuffs, and charges. You can't erase, but Linda clung to delusion, shoving them toward recklessness. Eddie still clutched the cuff's arm, frozen. Sean looked ready to bolt. Linda barked orders, rage consuming her, though no one listened. Reginald breathed deep, then delivered his line cool and grave. Eddie, Sean, answer this. Do you know the penalty for posing as a federal officer? Forget state. Forget HOA. This is federal law. Minimum penalty. Eddie blinked, faltering lips, parting without answer. Reginald didn't wait 3 years. That's minimum. And that's if you're lucky. If you escalate. If you touch me. We're talking more assault, false imprisonment, conspiracy, do the math. Sean's eyes widened, the fight draining out of him with every word. His strength collapsed as Reginald's voice, laced with law and certainty, carved through. His bravado. Linda, he's not bluffing, Sean whispered fiercely. Though the crowd heard every syllable, Linda snapped back, defensive. Her tone shrill. Don't listen. He's only trying to frighten you into retreat. Reginald fixed her with a gaze, calm. But piercing, you've already lost, Linda. Your neighbors see it. The entire block feels it. And deep down, you sense it too. A chorus of murmurs rose, confirming his words. A mother with her child muttered, He's right. This is madness. Eddie's hand sagged, the cuffs dangling limp against his side, but Reginald pressed forward, closing the gap. Voice softened into a measured cadence, edged with experience, the kind forged from facing hardened criminals without faltering. Do you know the single line dividing genuine authority from counterfeit authority? Reginald asked, sweeping his gaze across Eddie, Sean, and Linda. Accountability. Real officers are bound by law. Imposters are bound by ego, and ego will bury you in a grave or cage. The blow landed. Eddie fidgeted, sweat cutting paths across his skin. Reginald's tone grew steady, carrying for the neighborhood still recording. These families deserve better than threats. They deserve truth. They deserve leaders who fix problems with fairness, not intimidation. Linda let out a bitter cackle, shaking her head. Respect, don't dare speak to me about respect. Do you know how many sleepless nights I've poured into this place, how many grievances I've carried? People beg for order, Reginald. Order means protection, he replied evenly. Not forced trust fuels it, and trust dies the moment you send imposters in toy vests, to menace your neighbors. Eddie whispered, voice thin. Maybe he's right, Linda. Maybe it's time to stop. No. Linda snapped, spinning toward him. If we retreat, we lose everything. Everyone here will think, I've failed my post. Do you want that? Sean finally erupted, his patience gone. You think this is about your title? I'm not taking a fall for you, Linda. Not jail. Not this. He ripped the Velcro badge from his vest, tossing it to the pavement. The cloth collapsed like a confession. Neighbors gasped. Cameras zoomed, capturing the illusion unraveling piece by piece. Reginald's focus locked on Eddie. That's one who woke up. What about you? Eddie's hands trembled, cuffs rattling faint. His shield of arrogance shattered enough for Reginald to glimpse the man behind mirrored shades. Choose carefully. Reginald pressed, voice low and intimate. Linda won't be there. When the police question you, she won't be beside you when a judge delivers sentence. She'll protect herself. You'll be left wearing real steel. The crowd hushed, waiting. Eddie finally let the cuffs drop their clang against concrete, louder than Linda's protests. No. Linda shrieked, stomping like a child denied candy. Pick them up. Don't let him win. Eddie froze, then backed away, chest heaving, shame thick on his face. Reginald seized the opening and delivered the final stroke, standing tall. Eyes locked to Linda. True leadership isn't about domination. Linda, it's about responsibility, and you've abandoned yours. The crowd broke in, voices swelling. He's right. She's crossed the line. We don't want this anymore. Linda glanced around, pale recognition dawning that her grip on control was dust slipping through open fingers. Reginald stooped, lifted the discarded cuffs, and held them high, gleaming in the sunlight. This is what happens when control masquerades as justice. When fear is dressed as respect, this isn't justice, it's deception. Before the weight of that image settled, Eddie's pride snapped desperate. He lunged forward, shoving Sean aside, closing on Reginald. Neighbors gasped, phones pivoted, voices screaming, "Don't touch him." Eddie didn't care. He reached for Reginald's wrist, intent on forcing the cuffs again. His final blunder, Reginald's body moved like instinct. Sidestep, seize, twist in one practiced motion. Eddie's arm folded behind him, the same cuffs. Clamping around his own wrists, shock struck him harder than pain. Knees crashing to the driveway in under 3 seconds. The crowd erupted, disbelief spilling. Did you see that? He didn't even struggle. He just moved. Reginald didn't gloat. He restrained. Eddie with minimal pressure. Voice calm, professional, you're finished, don't resist, you'll only worsen your fate. Linda's cry split the air. What are you doing? You can't arrest him. Reginald's eyes sliced to her cold. You're right, I can't. But I can hold him for impersonating an officer until real law enforcement arrives, and after his attempt at assault charges will only grow. The crowd roared, some applauding, others raging at Linda. This is your doing. Linda, you pushed it too far. Sean, stripped of his vest, staggered back, both hands raised. I'm done, I quit. I never agreed to this. His voice cracked, fear. Raw lady, you never told us he was federal. Reginald's tone cut smooth. That's because she had no idea. Linda faltered. Color draining, what are you saying? Reginald straightened, one hand firm on Eddie. The other reached into his pocket, producing a worn leather wallet. He flipped it open, flashing it high enough for every phone to catch sunlight striking the golden. Badge, Special Agent Reginald Carter. He declared, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Silence blanketed the block. Only leaves rustled and Eddie's ragged breaths. Mrs. Henderson whispered. I knew he carried himself different. Marcus yelled from across. The street holy! He's FBI! The phones devoured every second badge voice, and Linda's face-caving Reginald never broke his stare. You walked imposters onto my property, endangered neighbors thinking fear equaled power. But you miscalculated, you. Never knew who stood here. Linda's lips trembled, her protest hollow. This is abuse of power. You can't just his reply, sliced abuse of power from the woman who staged a false arrest over grass and driveways. No, Linda. What I do is legal. What you did is criminal. Neighbors muttered disgust, dripping each word. Linda's attempts only sinking her further. Reginald adjusted Eddie's hold, addressing the block clearly. This was never about lawns or fences. It was about people feigning power. They lacked believing intimidation was leadership. It ends now. Eddie groaned, pride gone. Sean hovered on the fringe, wanting to vanish. Linda shrieked, still desperate, "You're humiliating me." Reginald's tone softened, but never bent. "No, Linda, you humiliated yourself, blinded by pride, risking every neighbor here because you couldn't surrender control. Phones recorded mercilessly. Evidence stacked. Eddie's shirt dark with sweat. Sean trembling on the curb. Reginald's badge blazing gold. The message. Undeniable real authority doesn't sprout from fear. It grows from service protection. Sacrifice fake power always ends in reckoning. Linda's voice broke, pleading. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. You weren't supposed to resist Reginald's. Eyes bored into hers. Voice final. That's because you never imagined meeting someone who knows what real authority looks like. Silence swallowed the street again, the petty charade now transformed into a national spectacle. But the climax hadn't. Arrived because distant sirens were cutting through the Texas, heat red and blue lights swelling stronger with every heartbeat. Neighbors shifted, phones rose higher, preparing to record the end. Eddie knelt in chains. Sean muttered curses. Linda, pale, insisted, You can't do this. The police will take my side, they know me. I'm HOA president. Reginald secured Eddie easily. Voice matter-of-fact, Linda. The only fact they'll know is you invited criminals onto a neighbor's property and your neighborhood witnessed every second. He lifted his chin toward the crowd. Every single phone out here is evidence. Linda glanced around wildly. It was true. Neighbors on all sides had their cameras raised, recording her unraveling. Some whispered frantically into devices broadcasting live streams, while others simply hit record, capturing every tremor of fear etched across her face. The Hendersons stayed firm on their porch, shaking their heads. Mr. Henderson muttered, "She's finished." His wife's nod, sealing the truth. "It's all preserved." Reginald leaned toward Eddie, who shook visibly. "Stay still when officers arrive. I'll hand you over. Don't complicate this." Eddie offered no resistance fight, gone replaced by dread of what awaited him in custody. The crowd stirred louder as patrol cars finally arrived, two cruisers, tires crunching asphalt angled across the street doors. Opened, officers stepped out, hands poised near belts, eyes scanning sharply, hands where we can see them. One barked. Reginald complied instantly, lifting his free, hand still keeping Eddie secured. His voice, crisp, calm. "Officers. I'm Special Agent Reginald Carter, FBI badge in my pocket, identification ready. The suspect attempted impersonation and assaulted me here." The officers exchanged wary looks, eyes flicking. From his badge gleaming in the wallet to the wall of witnesses, one officer, broad-shouldered, approached. Hand extended. "Let's see credentials." Sir Reginald nodded. Producing ID smoothly, the officer studied it. Recognition shifting into respect and, "Relief, all right, you're good, we'll take custody." Murmurs spread again. Neighbors filming as Eddie was pulled up, cuffed behind his back, marched toward a cruiser. Linda's voice cracked, desperation dripping. "No, he's not guilty. Reginald is twisting. Everything you have to believe me." Another officer. A sharp-eyed younger woman advanced on Linda. "Ma'am, we've got dozens of witnesses, and frankly, this looks terrible. Did you authorize them to pose as enforcement?" Linda's lips moved, but no words. Emerged neighbors shouted, "She brought them here. She ordered them to act." The officer's tone hardened. "Ma'am, step aside. If you keep interfering, this becomes obstruction." Linda sagged her authority, stripped powerless under flashing lights. Reginald stood tall, composed near his steps. Motionless, his stillness radiated more command than Linda's frantic pacing. Officer Ramirez, the broad man who checked ID, returned. Agent Carter, appreciate your cooperation. Dispatch confirmed your credentials. Looks like you handled by the book? Reginald nodded. I only meant to stop escalation. He lunged at me with cuffs. I had no choice. Ramirez sighed. Good news is everything's on tape. Between neighbors and our cams, charges are solid impersonation, unlawful. Restraint, trespassing, conspiracy, DA can sort it out. Reginald's gaze fell on Linda, who froze. Don't forget instigation, he added. Ramirez followed his look, not ignoring her. Roll, he called Green. Bring her over. The crowd buzzed louder. Officer Green approached. Linda, ma'am, we need to speak. Linda raised her chin, masking fear with indignation. This is misunderstanding. I was enforcing standards. That's my duty. I didn't break law. Green kept steady, ma'am. Your duty doesn't involve authorizing. Impersonators. You'll need to come provide a statement downtown. Gasps swept through the block, whispers at last she's going. Linda's mask cracked. You can't arrest me, I'm HOA president. Reginald's voice sliced calm but merciless, that title. Doesn't shield you from law, if anything. It demanded better judgment. Phones captured every second, Green's hand pressed to her arm, guiding her toward the cruiser. Linda pulled back, but the grip firmed. She had no choice. Neighbors muttered, recorded, whispered, as her authority dissolved. Sean, still at the curb, stammered, Am I going too? Ramirez turned. We'll need your statement. Your words decide. Charges cooperate. Sean nodded, sweating. I'll talk. I'll say everything I never wanted at this. Far Ramirez gave curt, nod-signaled escort. Reginald exhaled slowly. Tension easing, neighbors whispered. Admired, clapped lightly. One voice called, You handled that better than anyone. He only nodded, asking officers what next. Ramirez replied. Eddie and Linda booked statements, gathered Sean's role, assessed. Then courts handle it. You'll testify likely. Reginald's nod was calm. The important thing is the street safe. Green stepped closer. Voice lowered. You know, Agent Carter. Most times suspects aren't neatly cuffed when we arrive. You made this simpler. Reginald stayed professional. I wanted no blood-spilled control without chaos still. Irony wasn't lost. The neighborhood seethed. Linda's iron reign shattered in front of all the Hendersons, whispered. He's not just neighbor anymore. He protected us. Her husband nodded. People will remember squad cars pulled away. Eddie inside one, Linda in another. The crowd lingered, stunned lights painting red and blue against brick homes, forever marking the block. Reginald stood firm, silent eyes fixed on the departing cruisers. He never asked for this, but he knew fallout was just beginning. What none of them realized yet was that the aftermath, the fallout in the days that followed, would change their community far more than this one confrontation ever could the following days. In Plano, felt like the neighborhood was living under a magnifying glass. The flashing lights may have left, but the tension hadn't. What had played out in Reginald's driveway didn't just end with two people in the back of squad cars. It spread through the block like wildfire by Sunday morning. Everyone had seen the videos. Clips were circulating on Facebook groups shared on Nextdoor, even making their way to local news stations. The headline scrolled across one Dallas news channel, HOA, President detained after confrontation with FBI agent neighbor for neighbors, who had quietly resented Linda's heavy-handed approach. It felt like vindication. Mrs. Henderson waved at Reginald from her porch the next morning, her voice carrying across the street. You did this community a service, don't you forget it. Others weren't as vocal, but their glances spoke volumes. Subtle acknowledgments passed between porches and sidewalks. Neighbors who once dismissed him as just another man trimming. Hedges now studied him differently, some with gratitude, some with lingering unease. No one had imagined the quiet fellow behind the mower was an FBI agent able to turn aside danger with surgical ease. Linda's absence screamed louder than words. Her house-sealed, tight blinds pulled her driveway empty by Tuesday. The HOA board circulated a carefully worded message. The association will convene a special session to address recent developments and leadership succession the neighborhood needed. No translation. Linda's reign had collapsed. But her downfall was only one piece of the aftershock. Eddie's mugshot soon filled local news feeds. His history littered with petty crimes, theft, disorderly conduct, unpaid citations, desperation, not authority. While Sean quickly bent to cooperation, spilling to police how Linda lured them with promises of money and status. She fed their egos, told them the neighborhood needed muscle to put Reginald in his place, discussed spread across fences and lawns. Whispers carried how Linda had long hinted he didn't belong. Her coded complaints unraveling into truth by midweek families gathered in the park, an impromptu assembly. Reginald hadn't intended to join, yet jogging past he was beckoned. Agent Carter, a man, called his tone reverent. "We owe you thanks. You revealed what was hidden." Reginald slowed, shook his head, breath still quick. "I didn't act for applause. I acted because it was right. This is my home, too. My family's home, and intimidation will not rule here." A woman clasping her daughter's hand spoke softly, "But it means more than that. You proved fear collapses when it's confronted. Linda's shadowed people for years, until you." Reginald's gaze softened, crouching to the child's eye level. That's the lesson bullies feed on: silence. They thrive until someone speaks truth. And when truth stands firm, fear breaks. The girl's shy smile clung to her mother's fingers. By Friday, the story leapt beyond Plano, a national mourning. Show replayed the clip of Reginald calmly lifting his badge while holding Eddie restrained anchors, called it a moment where honesty shattered. False authority reporters tried for interviews. He declined. "This isn't about me." He insisted it's about accountability. But inside, he pondered the meaning. Years dismantling criminal networks. And yet here, in his own street, he faced rot, just as dangerous pride dressed as leadership. The next HOA meeting sealed Linda's fate: unanimous removal. Her chair left vacant, replaced by a quiet man. Harold Jennings pledging transparency, yet scars lingered. Neighbors would not forget the day their leader weaponized false power. Parents whispered to children. Teachers in classrooms turned it into lessons about truth and responsibility for Reginald. It wasn't Linda's collapse that mattered. It was the conversations her fall inspired, fences no longer boundaries but places for neighbors to lean, talk, and question what true leadership should mean. One evening, while watering his lawn, Marcus approached sheepish Mr. Carter. "That video's at 1 million views. People say you're a hero." Reginald smiled faintly. "I'm no hero. Marcus, I just refuse to bow." Marcus tilted, thoughtful. "Yeah, but you showed us how." Reginald glanced down the street. Kids, biking neighbors, talking porches alive. The block wasn't flawless, but it was lighter, freer. Maybe that was victory. He whispered, though, even in peace, he knew one more truth remained: the kind that endured beyond disputes. 1 week later, Saturday dawned: bright lawns, trimmed children racing bikes while parents watched with ease. But memories clung like shadows. Every glance at his driveway marked it as a landmark where truth had stood. Taller than intimidation, Reginald kept his rituals, coffee in hand, leaning against his porch rail, watching the block stir awake. Neighbors waved, strangers nodded thanks, gestures of gratitude flowed, yet he never basked in it. Pride was not his weight. Instead, he thought of lessons that might last that afternoon. The HOA hosted a park gathering, nearly every household present, folding chairs, lined families, children, running conversations buzzing. When Reginald arrived, silence spread. The new president, Harold Jennings, asked him to speak. He hesitated, then stepped forward, voice steady but modest. "Last week," he said, "you all saw the cost of false authority, the danger of power twisted into intimidation. It could have ended with blood. Children watched. Cameras rolled. Lives nearly shattered. What matters isn't me or a badge, but the kind of neighborhood we choose. Do we want fear's rule or respect and accountability?" Nods spread, murmurs echoed. Leadership isn't domination, it's service. Means people first even without recognition. A hand, rose Mrs. Henderson, her voice clear. Agent Carter, what do we do if it happens again? Reginald answered without pause. Stand united, speak. Don't let fear divide. Silence feeds bullies, but light kills. Lies. The crowd clapped softly. Then louder parents, teaching children Marcus, filming again, capturing words for the world. Reginald turned to him. Use your platform wisely, son. Not for drama, but for truth. Marcus grinned. That's the plan as people. Lingered conversations blossomed. Strangers became friends. Fences turned into bridges. Tension dissolved into connection. That night, Reginald stood at his driveway, the sunset painting gold across brick homes, the same place where Eddie lunged Linda. Screamed and lights blazed, now a turning point. He recalled missions overseas, cartel lieutenants, interrogations in shadows, and realized sometimes the most vital battles weren't fought abroad, but on your street among children and families. He whispered the truth. Always comes to light. Laughter drifted from kids down the block. He smiled, carried the empty trash can back toward the garage. Life moved on, and that was the point. The moral etched clear. Real power never grows from fear or titles, but from accountability and courage. The choice belongs to each of us every day. If you're watching this story right now, ask yourself in your own community, in your own life. Are you building with fear or with respect? Are you staying silent? Or are you speaking truth when it's hardest? That's the choice each of us faces, whether we wear a badge or not. So if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about leadership, community, and the meaning of true authority, make sure to subscribe. Because stories like this remind us all, sometimes the fight for justice happens right where we live.